This is McKenzie Shirilla, who has become better known as one of America's most insufferable young killers. Now, you may have already heard her name before, but do you really know the full story? In the aftermath of a horrifying tragedy, McKenzie managed to fool millions of Americans. Countless people believed that she was simply the driver caught up in a terrible accident. However, some of those closest to her suspected that there was far more beneath the surface, and unfortunately, they were right. Through some remarkable technical investigation, detectives uncovered that this was no accident at all, and as her phone data, social media activity, and private messages were seized and then later released to the public, the world began to see that behind this young, sweet facade was something far darker. What emerged were deeply unsettling phone calls, hundreds of bizarre videos filmed behind the wheel, and quite literally thousands of pieces of evidence that revealed an erratic, selfish, and deeply controlling teenager. And, well, that was only the beginning, because what she posted after the deaths of her boyfriend and best friend, that is something that will stay with you long after this story ends. Have you ever met someone who made you feel invincible? The kind of person who looks at you straight in the eye and says, nothing bad could ever happen to us. And so you start believing in them. You start thinking that maybe they're right. And maybe that their love can somehow shield you from all the tragedy and recklessness in the world. But what happens when that feeling of invincibility is then all of a sudden tested? When the person who promised you forever and always is now behind the wheel with their foot firmly pressed on the accelerator, and the two of you, with another person in the back, are all hurtling towards a building at more than 90 miles per hour. And that is the moment that you realize that you were never actually safe at all. Unfortunately, the reason why I'm asking you this question is because for a man named Dominic Russo, this was actually his reality. It was in the early hours of July the 31st, 2022, that a car tore through an intersection in Strongville, Ohio, at more than 90 miles per hour. Seconds later, that same car smashed into a brick building, killing 2 people almost instantly and leaving a third person barely clinging to life. The only one to survive this crash was the driver, and the driver's name was McKenzie Shirilla, and as you will soon find out, this story is not actually one of a tragic accident. Instead, it's one of how love, obsession, and control all collided at full speed. And what came next was how the internet and the greater general public would have to determine if this was some sort of accident. Spoiler, it wasn't. Or if this was murder. So, of course, the main questions today are, who is McKenzie Shirilla? Who were the other 2 people in the vehicle with her? And how and why did this story unfold? Welcome back to Coffeehouse Crime, folks. My name is Adrian, and today we're looking at the story of McKenzie Shirilla. McKenzie was this Ohio teen who, from the outside, seemed to have absolutely everything ahead of her. She had a boyfriend that she adored, a group of close friends, popularity, good grades, and a future that was only just beginning to unfold. But beneath the surface, there were indeed cracks. Cracks that nobody seemed to notice until it was far too late. And when they finally did, multiple families were destroyed. And I'm not talking just 1 or 2 here, but several. This is a story about control, young love gone wrong, and a split-second decision that ended the lives of multiple people. And so with all of that said, I think it's time to begin this video. But before we do, this is a reminder that Coffeehouse Crime is run by 3 friends and of course, Nero. There are no corporations here, no Netflix studios, and no AI slop. And so if you want to support channels like this one, please do consider subscribing. Anyway folks, with all of that out the way, please grab yourself a coffee and let's caffeinate while we investigate. This is the case of McKenzie Shirilla. It was just before dawn of July the 31st, 2022, the kind of hour where the world is still asleep, when the roads are empty, and where a dark silence drapes all over the small town streets of America. We've all found ourselves in moments like this. It's a peaceful yet ominous silence, where you feel liberated but almost suffocated by aloneness. But in the quiet suburb of Strongville, Ohio, that silence was suddenly shattered when a single screech of tires was followed by a thunderous boom. And just like that, the calm of those early morning hours was suddenly gone. It was around 5:30 that morning that a car suddenly crashed into a wall at more than 90 miles per hour, with the surveillance footage capturing the seconds before impact. Unbelievably, nobody in the area had actually noticed this collision, meaning that the wreckage and everyone inside received no help for the next 45 minutes. When police and paramedics finally reached the scene, they were met with total devastation. A 2018 Toyota Camry had torn through a business sign and slammed headfirst into the brick wall of an industrial building at an almost unimaginable speed. In fact, the car was essentially unrecognizable. Obviously, I've had to heavily blur this footage, but in one of the officer's body cams, you can even hear him whispering, "It split in two." And beside him, another responder, who was a veteran and had seen decades of road accidents, simply called it the worst wreckage that he had ever witnessed. Hidden inside this mangled heap of metal were 3 young adults. In the driver's seat was 17-year-old McKenzie Shirilla, who somehow was still breathing and barely clinging to life. Found next to her in the passenger seat was her boyfriend Dominic Russo, who at the time was 20 years old. And in the back was their close friend Davian Flanagan, who was 19 years old. Tragically, both Dominic and Davian were pronounced dead at the scene. As I've already mentioned, by the time emergency responders arrived at the scene, they had been trapped there for almost 45 minutes, meaning that any chance they had at surviving the crash was likely lost during that time. After being freed from the wreckage, McKenzie was then airlifted to hospital. It is noted that she was barely alive and had multiple broken bones with several severe injuries. To everyone who saw that scene, it looked like an absolutely tragic accident, and to them, it was another heartbreaking reminder of how fragile life can be behind the wheel. However, as investigators started to dig deeper into this case, they realized that this was actually no accident. Now, to really understand the gravity of that morning, we should first know who these 3 people were, because, as you will likely know by now, the devil is always in the detail. So, let's begin with Dominic Russo. At only 20 years old, Dominic was the kind of guy that everyone respected. He was a recent high school graduate with a bright mind who had already started several small businesses. This even included a clothing line that he ran out of his own bedroom, the kind of origin story that later on turns out to be the success behind a hard-working person. He wasn't the kind of kid who would get into trouble either. Instead, he was described as focused, mature, loved his family, and was extremely hardworking. And of course, he was also Mackenzie's boyfriend, which is a really important factor to this story. So it turns out that the two had actually been together for quite a long time. And to be honest with you, probably longer than they should have. But we'll get to that in a moment. Found in the back seat of that car was Davian Flanagan, who was a close friend to both McKenzie and Dominic. Adopted at only 8 years old after being removed from a bad family home, Davian had grown up to become a warm and upbeat guy who just knew how to make everyone laugh. As a former high school athlete, he was also full of energy and always smiling. He had very wholesome aspirations too, as Davian wanted to become a barber so that he too could have his own slice of local community. He was the kind of person who wanted to feel settled, but tragically, now he too was gone. And of course, then there was the driver, McKenzie. Now, McKenzie Shirilla was the only person who had survived the crash that night, and as it turns out, there was far more to her story than meets the eye. Born in 2004, she grew up in Strongville with her parents, Natalie and Steve. She had just graduated high school that summer, but you could probably say that she was already something of a small-town celebrity, at least in her mind anyway. I think everybody outside of her circle just simply saw her as another person. Classmates described her as both outgoing and confident, and let's be honest, she just loved being the center of attention. It turns out that McKenzie even idolized Regina George from Mean Girls. If you've seen the movie, you probably know exactly what I'm talking about. Regina is this manipulative queen who thinks that she runs the entire school, and yeah, that was kind of Mackenzie's thing too. And outside of school, Mackenzie was trying to build a following on TikTok, posting things like her outfits, her day-to-day schedule, and her relationship highlights. It's the kind of information that, of course, you yourself really care about, But to be honest, for everyone outside of your circle, well, they really don't give a shit. Now, in fairness to her, she did actually end up getting a decent number of views. And as her audience grew, brands started sending her clothes and gifts. Now, for a 17-year-old, this was a huge ego boost, and of course, McKenzie quite clearly thrived on it. Though she probably could have done without it, given her arrogance. And I have to say, while her online life looked like a teen's perfect dream, her real life was anything but that. Looking a little deeper into their relationship, McKenzie and Dominic had been dating ever since early high school, which was around 4 years. But it turns out that the entire thing was always on again, off again, because they would routinely break up before then getting back together. And it's also true that what started innocently would quickly turn into something far more volatile. Dominic's family initially adored McKenzie, and they would even see her as part of the family. The couple even lived together for a while, which of course is a teenage fantasy that unsurprisingly doesn't age well, because behind closed doors, things between the two were slowly falling apart. By the year 2022, the relationship between them had soured. They were always constantly arguing, frequently breaking up, and McKenzie had even started to make horrific threats towards him. In fact, Dominic's family noted that in the months leading up to his death, not only would he often look miserable, but McKenzie had also become increasingly possessive. She always wanted to know where Dominic was, who he was with, and why he wouldn't text her back immediately. And according to not one, but several of her friends, she could be extremely scary when she didn't get her way. Only a few weeks before the crash, he had even called his mother in a panic during one of their arguments. And when a family friend drove out to pick Dominic up, McKenzie yelled that she was going to wreck his car. Moments later, she then lunged herself across the seat, landing multiple punches against his face. And another video, which was recorded around the same time as all of this, showed McKenzie threatening to break into Dominic's house. And again, as I always do in these videos, just to point out that while all of this was happening, her social media showed a very different side to her and their relationship. To all of her followers on the outside, she was still this sweet and pretty girl with a perfect boyfriend and a glamorous lifestyle. But to all of the people closest to her, they could all see that McKenzie was a spiraling, jealous, volatile, and increasingly dangerous woman child. And just listen here to the way that she speaks to him.
What do you mean? What do you mean?
You know it. That's exactly what I mean. You don't know exactly what I mean. You're gonna come open this door right now, or there's gonna be a serious fucking problem.
I can't. No, like you can't keep that. You can't keep making all these threats. Like I can't
And
open the door.
You can't keep kicking me out of a place that you say is my home.
Kenzie, I didn't kick you out. You took all your shit and dipped. And said we were done.
I did not say we are done, Dom. Okay, ready? I'm gonna count to 10. The door's gonna open. Okay. You're gonna open the door and stop hiding behind the door like a little fucking bitch.
It is obvious from this video that McKenzie was possessive, aggressive, and extremely controlling over Dominic. Throughout this video, she is threatening to break his things if he doesn't let her into his own home. And unfortunately, there are multiple recordings like this. Just through the mere existence of this video, we know that Dominic knew that this was bad enough to record, and it highlighted his insecurity and fear over his own safety and well-being. The warning signs were all over her social media too, if you were old enough to look for it. She was quite literally a walking red flag, to the point where any sane person like you and I would look at her videos and think she is absolutely on a one-way ticket to oblivion. It is evident that McKenzie was a spiraling, jealous, volatile, and increasingly dangerous woman child. But despite the warning signs, no adults intervened. And unfortunately, as we all know by now, she would eventually cross that line in a way that provided no return, because days later, both Dominic and Davian were dead. The following body cam footage, which was recorded by officers attending Dominic Russo's family address, shows the moments that his mother realized that her son was tragically never coming home. And I have to stress here, this is some of the most distressing footage that I have ever seen.
Unfortunately, there was an accident, okay, involving McKenzie, Davian, and who we believe is Dominic, is the third person.
An accident?
A car accident. Okay.
Where?
Last night.
Wait. Wait.
Just relax. Just hold on. Just stay seated. Just stay seated. Just hold on. Just listen.
Yes. Take a deep breath.
Christine, look at me. Take a deep breath.
Yeah, just take
a deep breath. Okay. Right now, all we know is that the driver, who was McKenzie, is at Metro.
Right.
Okay. Hold on.
So yeah, just
stay seated, please.
Take your time.
Please, just relax. Take a deep breath.
That's
Take a deep breath.
That's okay. You're good. Take your time.
Take a deep breath. Okay. Is anybody else home here with you right now?
But Christopher, but he's sleeping. Angela's in Florida. Wait, where's Mackenzie's mom?
Okay. They're down at Metro right now. Okay. The other two passengers, like I said, was Davion and who we believe is Dominic. Okay. From what McKenzie told us. Okay. Both Davion and Dominic are deceased.
Oh God!
Yeah.
Christine.
Just sit down.
Oh God!
Just sit down.
Oh my God!
Krista's gonna come outside.
That's okay.
Christine.
Yes. Just take a deep breath. It's okay.
Oh my God!
No.
Christine.
No!
Please.
No! I think he can't be. He can't be. What did she do?
Christine.
What did she do?
It would be best.
Oh my God! Oh my God!
Is there somebody else we can call for you?
Oh my God! Oh my God!
Is there somebody we can call for you?
Where are you going?
Okay, wait. Okay.
Oh my God! Oh my God!
As you already know by now, Mackenzie was the only one to survive this crash, and when she was found, she was unconscious and slumped over the wheel with her foot still firmly pressed on the accelerator. Her list of injuries were absolutely enormous. She had broken bones, internal injuries, bruises, you name it basically. She was extremely lucky to survive, because by all accounts, she should have perished in that crash. As you can see in this body cam footage, her parents rushed to the hospital when they heard the news. At the time, they actually had no idea what state she was in or who she was with, and upon hearing that not only was she not the only one in that car, but she was in fact the only one to survive, well, I'll let you see their own reactions for yourself.
Progress in Alameda, car into a building. 2 are deceased in the vehicle, daughter's driving.
Who died?
I don't know whether, but there's one that we don't know. His name's Jacob. Does anyone know Jacob?
Dom?
No, stop. Let him talk.
Guys, I know, we've been dealing with this. Your daughter's okay. She's talking to us. I talked to her, okay? Your daughter's alive, okay? Your daughter's alive. She was driving the vehicle, okay?
Who's that? Jacob and who?
I think what's the name you said?
Dom?
Might be.
Oh my God.
Stop.
What's his relation to you? Okay, yeah, then Dom was in the car.
Stop. Oh my God. What? Are you kidding me?
Ma'am, it's...
What?
That's where we're at right now. Okay?
What did she say? What happened?
It's right now, it's an ongoing investigation. Speed is definitely a factor. So are drugs.
And when she finally woke up in hospital and was told that both Dominic and Davion hadn't made it, witnesses say that she was absolutely inconsolable. Apparently, she was crying, screaming, and completely undone by the news. Now, at least in that moment, everyone was fooled by Mackenzie, and they all believed that this must have been some sort of horrible accident gone wrong. But let's just say that, in the weeks that followed, not everything sat right. In fact, it was quite obvious that something was wrong, because while most people would retreat from the spotlight, Mackenzie did the opposite. We know this because in the aftermath of Dominic's and Davion's deaths, her social media presence exploded. In fact, her TikTok followers basically skyrocketed overnight while she was still in that hospital bed. And instead of being quiet during this time and reflecting on what had happened, she instead leaned into the fame. From here on out, she posted videos from hospital, showing her injuries, her wheelchair, and even her meals. Anything that could give her views, basically. In one clip, she even gave a little tour of her ward, smiling as if this was some sort of holiday vlog and not a tragedy. I mean, talk about tone deaf. And it wouldn't stop there either, because once McKenzie was discharged from hospital, she would then go out to attend events, concerts, and even festivals, filming herself in her wheelchair all at the same time. Throughout these moments, she was seen singing and laughing as if nothing bad had happened. And then of course came the video that surprised everyone, that being this one.
I'm not even cool, I'm just one of those girls that can do a lot of drugs and not die.
As you can see, she was seen gloating to the camera, which was captioned, "I'm just one of those girls that can do a lot of drugs and not die." Her behavior, actions, and choice of words were all undeniably cruel by now. 2 young men had died in her car, in her care, and under her responsibility. And despite her actions, here she was, simply joking about how she was indestructible. People didn't know whether to be disgusted, horrified, or both, because to the outside world, this wasn't grief anymore. It was outright arrogance and a disturbing lack of remorse. The confusing part is that at around the same time, she had also been posting tributes. McKenzie would soon write on Dominic's memorial page to say that he was the last person to deserve this, and that she missed his laugh and smile, and he meant everything to her. She would share photos of the two, write loving captions, and then go back to her tone-deaf clout chasing. And this sinister cycle of love and shame seemed to go on forever and ever and ever. I mean, for example, take a look at this Halloween photo that McKenzie posted only 3 months after they were killed. She was dressed up as a corpse, spattered in fake blood, and made grotesque faces as if she was auditioning for some sort of budget TikTok edition of American Psychopath. Seriously though, this photo makes me so upset, and unfortunately I've had to stare at it so many times. It's kind of like she looked at grief, trauma, and public outrage and said, "You know what this needs? A photo that proves my face is just as ugly as my personality." Needless to say, Davion's family were absolutely outraged, and his sister was so disturbed by this post that she urged her family to call the police. And honestly, who could blame her for feeling that way? Just imagine scrolling through social media and then seeing the girl who was responsible for your brother's death pulling this face. Now, whatever sympathy the public had for McKenzie, it was slowly beginning to evaporate. And don't get me wrong, there were some people who did try to excuse it, especially her parents. Those people claimed that she was simply traumatized and coping badly, but most people saw something that was far, far darker, kind of like she was hoping to be the center of the story, no matter how horrific it was. Rumors around town grew louder, and while police officers continued with their investigation, McKenzie continued to feed into those concerns. And soon enough, what was once seen as a tragic accident became an active homicide investigation. For the first few weeks, police treated this case like any other accident, and nothing seemed suspicious to begin with. Police officers would run through the usual checklist, which included alcohol, weather, road conditions, and fatigue, and everything seemed to come back clean. However, things were already not quite adding up. For example, toxicology reports revealed THC in her system, meaning that she had likely been smoking marijuana on the night of the crash. And when police officers investigated her bag, they would be in for a surprise, because what they found was gear used for psychedelic mushrooms, including scales and packaging. When it came to the vehicle itself, one early theory was that maybe the car had malfunctioned or failed mechanically. For example, a brake failure. And so, with that in mind, detectives decided to take it to a forensic mechanic, and when the report finally came back, well, let's just say that it changed everything. The report concluded that not only was the car in perfect working order with no errors or issues whatsoever, but the engine, accelerator, and brakes all worked exactly as intended, which of course left investigators with one dire question. If it wasn't the car, then who was it? They began talking to friends and family and trying to build a clearer picture of McKenzie and Dominic's relationship. And of course, that is when they realized that there was an alarming pattern. They noticed the explosive arguments, the threats, and the social media. And all of a sudden, this was no longer looking like a tragic accident. In fact, by now, people had started speaking up over McKenzie and her concerning behavior. The warning signs had been observed by multiple people, and even Dominic's own mother highlighted many issues issues in the relationship after her son had been murdered. In the interviewing officer's notes, she had highlighted how McKenzie had become controlling and argumentative, and how both she and Dominic were ready to distance themselves from her. Even her ex-boyfriend spoke out, telling officers that he believed that she was so cooked from the drug use that she was no longer mentally fully together. And quite bluntly, after seeing literally dozens of videos of her shoving that bong into her mouth, yeah, I think she's completely chopped. For the record, it is a shame that I can't play any of these videos on YouTube due to community guidelines, but trust me here, there are quite literally hundreds of videos of her taking drugs. This includes her puffing on bongs, drinking lean, and smoking weed. By the way, this is just a quick side note here, but I have to ask, where the hell were her parents during all of this time? I genuinely can't believe how neglectful those two must have been in the year or two leading up to this tragedy. To give them at least some credit, there are a few messages between McKenzie and her parents where they pleaded her not to drive. As far back as the year 2020, her father had even begged her, offering to collect her at any time with no questions asked. So it does appear that not only was she reckless and disobedient, but her parents didn't have any control over her and even failed to regain any. Oh, and there are even plenty of instances where he's actually joking about her speeding tickets. Now, of course, we have to bear in mind that warnings are not proof, and detectives, well, they needed hard evidence. But thankfully, modern cars record everything, and McKenzie's car had an event data recorder, which essentially is the car's own little black box. And let's just say that what it revealed was nothing short of disgusting. The data recorded shows that in the final 5 seconds before impact, McKenzie's accelerator had been pressed 100% of the way down. And not only that, but her brakes were never even applied once. It became clear that she floored the gas pedal and never let go, of course resulting in sending all 3 of them into oblivion. By the time that car reached the brick wall, it was traveling at nearly 100 miles per hour. And remember, investigators even found one of McKenzie's fuzzy slippers wedged beneath the pedal. The murders of Dominic and Davian were now in the numbers. That discovery ended any illusion that this might possibly be an accident, and the only conclusion was that McKenzie had not lost control of the car, but instead had driven it that way in pure cold blood. The surveillance footage would tell its own story too. At 5:34 AM, her car can be seen making a normal right turn at an intersection near the business park. She can be seen stopping, signaling properly, and then turning as if all is normal. But only 60 seconds later, another camera captures that same car flying down the empty street. As detectives dug deeper, a motive slowly began to emerge. By now, Dominic's family had confessed that he had been thinking of ending the relationship, but quite understandably was quite scared to do so. And so, with this information at hand, police began to wonder, is it possible that maybe McKenzie decided that if she couldn't have Dominic, then no one could? Detectives also realized that only 3 days before the crash, McKenzie's phone placed her at the exact location as the car crash. And this was for no apparent reason either, because why would she be in a business park? There was absolutely no reason for her to be here. So why was she? As we know, toxicology reports would confirm that she was high on marijuana that morning, and that police also found psilocybin mushrooms and a digital scale in her purse. So, my own personal question here is, why hadn't she been investigated further at this point? Honestly, your guess is as good as mine, but personally, I'm chalking it up to good old-fashioned white girl privilege. When investigators eventually got around to looking through her phone and social media, what they found was sickening. There were dozens of videos of her driving recklessly, swerving, speeding, and even filming herself smoking behind the wheel. Seriously, this wasn't new behavior. All of this was just from a clout-chasing TikTok psychopath. By November of 2022, detectives were finally ready to act. That is when they traveled to her home, knocked on the front door, and then arrested her. And thankfully, we have this body cam footage to show you. Quite frankly, this footage is absolutely surreal. And as the police officers placed the handcuffs on her, McKenzie acted in a way precisely as you'd expect from someone like her. Because in that moment, she asked them to be careful not to break her expensive bracelet.
I'm the one who's been investigating the crash. You're under arrest for aggravated murder ×2, okay? Nobody's gonna ask you any questions. Nobody's gonna bother you. Can I have your key, please?
Could you please be careful taking this one off so it doesn't break the bracelet, please?
You got it. You got it.
So, Maccas, here is some fashion advice for you, but I think that bracelet is a little too flimsy. For those wrists, you should try something a little bit thicker, like handcuffs. And I have to say, they pair nicely with an orange jumpsuit. As McKenzie is placed in the back of a police car, she then closes her eyes, lies down, and cries a little bit. And maybe, for the first time in her life, she might have realized that actions have consequences. Moving to the legal proceedings of this case, McKenzie's trial officially began in summer of 2023, and by then, the entire community was watching. What had initially begun as a tragic accident had now turned into a courtroom drama, and one that felt almost cinematic. I mean, we have young love, obsession, aggression, TikTok, and a devastating end. Knowing that she likely didn't have much of a chance against a jury, McKenzie's defense team decided to make a bold choice and wave them away. Instead, her fate would rest solely in the hands of the county judge, who would determine not only her verdict, but her sentence too. No surprise, but the prosecution wasted no time in laying out the entire case against her. They argued that what happened that night was no accident at all. Instead, it was outright murder. They portrayed McKenzie as this young woman who couldn't stand the idea of losing the man that she loved, and someone who decided that if their relationship was going to end, well, it would end for everyone. And unfortunately for her, all of the evidence available seemed to back this up. A forensic expert would explain that the car's black box data confirmed that McKenzie never touched the brakes, and instead, she kept her foot on the accelerator right through until impact. In fact, it seems that her foot was jammed on the pedal right until the very last millisecond, meaning that she hadn't even flinched in the last moment. Investigators would also testify about the surveillance footage, the lack of mechanical failure, and the history of volatile fights between McKenzie and Dominic. Friends and family would also confirm the tension between the two, while family friend Chris Martin recalled the moment where McKenzie said that she would wreck him and his car. The defense team naturally tried to counter their narrative, instead arguing that there was no motive to harm Davian. They instead tried to tell the judge that McKenzie had seemed to suffer some kind of medical episode, and they theorized that maybe she had fainted or experienced a seizure. McKenzie also claimed that she couldn't remember a single thing about the crash, and that she woke up in the hospital with no memory of what had happened. However, there was no medical evidence to support any of these claims, and as the prosecutor pointed out, a seizure wouldn't cause her foot to slam on the gas pedal for several seconds straight. McKenzie's trial would last for just over 2 weeks, and when it was time for the judge to finally deliver the verdict, the courtroom fell completely silent. But no surprise, on August the 14th of 2023, she was found guilty of all 12 counts, which of course included 2 counts of murder. The judge would even call McKenzie, quote, hell on wheels, a phrase that will likely stick with her forever. I think she simply couldn't believe the idea that she would have to now face the consequences of her very own actions. Only 1 week later, she faced her sentencing. Family members of the victims stood before the court and spoke through tears, all demanding for her to receive the harshest sentence possible. Davion's sister was no different, and said that her family's pain would never fade for what she had done, and that McKenzie's actions had destroyed their entire world. Meanwhile, Christine Russo, who of course is Dominic's mother, faced McKenzie directly. Her voice broke multiple times, quite clearly struggling at the disbelief of the situation. And as for what she said, well, here it is, right from her own mouth.
This was not a car accident. The evidence and science proved that McKenzie Shirilla murdered my son, Dominic, as well as Davion. No one can imagine the pain of losing a child unless they have lost one themselves. The pain is forevermore. Time does not heal this wound. McKenzie, going to prison because you did this. Be thankful that you're still alive and have a future, whatever that may be. Dom and Davion were robbed of their futures, their hopes, and their dreams. McKenzie showed no mercy on Dominic, nor did she on Davion. Only God at this time can have mercy on her soul. Thank you.
McKenzie would even speak out herself, but rather than take full accountability for her actions, she instead told them that she hopes that one day they will find her innocent. Sure, McKenzie, keep on believing that.
I'm so deeply sorry. I hope one day you can see I would never let this happen or do it on purpose. And to my family, thank you for the support and all the love you guys give. Thank you for fighting with me. I love you all so much. I'm done. Thank you.
When all was said and done, Judge Russo finally sentenced McKenzie to 2 concurrent life sentences, one for each young life lost. She was therefore sentenced to life behind bars without the possibility of parole for 15 years. Now, disappointingly, because these life sentences run concurrently, it means that McKenzie could possibly be eligible for release as early as 2037, which personally I think is way too soon. I mean, if you think about it, she will only be in her early 30s by then. Meanwhile, her 2 victims are gone forever. Now, I find the next detail quite interesting, but the judge would even permanently revoke her driver's license, which basically means that she will never legally get behind the wheel again. I mean, imagine being released from prison and declared reformed in the eyes of the law, but still not allowed to drive. She better hope that all cars are autonomous taxis by the time she gets out. Even still, 15 years feels way too little. As one of the family members quite rightly put it, the victims don't get to come back in 15 years. They never get a second chance. In the aftermath of her sentencing, McKenzie's defense team has filed multiple appeals. But thankfully, so far, the courts have upheld her conviction, both in 2024 and then again in 2025. And so, Mackers remains in the Ohio Reformatory for Women, where she will likely spend at least the next couple of decades behind bars. Her parents still believe that she is innocent, by the way, because of course, how could their princess be capable of doing something so evil? To be honest with you, I think this is probably half the reason why McKenzie was even in this situation to begin with, because it doesn't sound like she ever learned how to take accountability. As you can see in this interview, her parents speak about how they believe that she doesn't deserve to be behind bars for homicide. Of course, while wearing these goofy Free McKenzie wristbands. Their delusion is honestly quite palpable. And I feel like I don't need to say anything here at all. I can just let them do their own talking instead.
Show me one piece of evidence, one, that says she did this on purpose. Show it to me. Here it is. That's it. Then she's right where she belongs and she's guilty of it. But there isn't any. There's no evidence what was going on in that car other than the information they gleaned from the black box information.
They don't know. There's information they didn't see. There's information they didn't have. There's information we didn't see or have.
Should she be in prison for murder?
No, absolutely not.
Should she be in prison for aggravated vehicular homicide?
I
don't know about the aggravated part because I don't think you can still say why was going on the car. Should she have been charged with reckless vehicular homicide, 2 counts? Absolutely. Absolutely.
Not if it was medical.
And the thing is, when you step away from the names and people involved in this situation and look at just the hard facts and information, you realize that a tragedy was bound to happen. Because it wasn't only the fact that this driver had recorded several dangerous moments behind the wheel prior to this night, but on the day of the crash, she was high on marijuana, had been partying all night, had shown worrying signs of aggression and possessiveness, and was also on little to no sleep. Quite frankly, she was not in the right state of mind to be driving at all that night, let alone behind the wheel and responsible for 2 other people. And what is most heartbreaking about all of this is the immaturity of it all. Because this happened because McKenzie was angry, impulsive, emotionally unequipped, self-entitled, reckless, and thick. And instead of calming down, she decided to weaponize not only her emotions, but her vehicle too. And this kind of emotional blindness is what turned an argument into a double homicide. The real tragedy here are the deaths of Dominic and Davion. And to be honest with you, I really have no words to describe how horrible this must be for both of their families. Both of these men were young and had their lives ahead of them. So, here's a personal story of mine, but I remember when I was, I think, 9 or 10 at the time, that my neighbour, who was 17, was unfortunately in a tragic car accident. I so distinctly remember that night. Unfortunately, he died right there at the scene, and I remember the look on his mother's face the following morning. To be honest, that family was never even remotely the same again, and it even impacted my own parents to quite a significant level. I actually think about this guy sometimes while behind the wheel, and it's a really good reminder of how fragile life can be. It really does make you think. We should really value life for all that it is and all that it's worth. And I think that's all I really want to say today, folks. It's probably a good place to stop. What it sounds like to me is that McKenzie never really learned how to deal with her emotions, and unfortunately, it grew to such a severe level that eventually 2 lives were lost in the process. But what are your thoughts here? Because this is quite a complex story. I suppose the thing that I'm most interested in is, do you think that her life sentences should have been run concurrently or one after another? Because personally, I don't think 15 years is enough time. As always, let me know in the comments down below. I'm going to end the video here because my battery is just about to die. Thank you again for watching, folks, and as always, I'll see you again very shortly, likely next week. Until then, remember to look after each other and, of course, yourselves. Thank you, and goodbye.